Welcome to New York 4 to 7, presented by Verizon. I'm your host, Chelsea Sherrod, and in honor of the Subway Series and the 4, 5, 6, and 7 trains that take fans to Citi Field and Yankee Stadium, we'll be covering between 4 and 7 topics on the Mets and Yankees every day the New York rivals play, and each week in between their matchups. How many topics we will hit today? That's up to our train conductor. So hop aboard. Let's start our commute. Now, let's bring in our guest for our season debut. First, to represent the Mets side of this rivalry, former Met and SNY pre- and post-game analyst Todd Zeile. And to represent the Yankee side, beat reporter for MLB, Bryan Hoch. Welcome, guys. Good to have you.
Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate getting the honor of representing the Mets, even though I played for both teams, as we know. But I'm bleeding a little more orange and blue these days.
I did
Okay.
not play for both teams, as we know, but I did cover both teams. I covered Todd when he was at Shea and a little bit at Yankee Stadium, so I'll do my best to keep up here.
See, we've got the best of the best for our debut. Thank you guys so much for being here. Okay, now let's see how many topics we have today. 6 topics for the 6th train. So guys, let's start things off with Juan Soto and the new rivalry. Bryan, starting with you, how do you think that Yankee fans will respond to Juan Soto's return?
The only question I have is how loud are the boos going to be? Like, what is it going to be? Like a jet engine decibel? Because it is going to be loud. I feel like Yankee fans, they fell in love with Soto, and what was there not to love last year? He carried them to the World Series. He hit the home run that clinched our first pennant since 2009, and then the World Series ended. He turned his back on them and went for the highest bid. And not just to any other team, he went across town to the Mets. So I think Yankee fans are going to take that personally. And I've been trying to come up with a comparison of a player who is more of a villain to Yankee fans, at least from the Mets perspective. And I think there isn't one. I think Soto is villain number one now. I think that, there were Red Sox certainly in the past that Yankee fans have hated and hated passionately, but it was never really a Met to hate. This is the first weekend we're going to see Yankee fans really hate a Met.
Oh, for sure. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what that response is going to be like. Todd, how do you think that Mets fans feel about Juan Soto's early season performance? Some would say he's underperforming. Others would say maybe he's right exactly where he should be. What do you think?
I think he's probably underperforming for a Juan Soto type of performance. That said, I mean, he's finding his way now. I think it'll only be a matter of time where he, kind of gets into his own groove. He's starting to drive the ball the opposite field a little bit. Where he's been struggling a little bit so far is with men on base, men in scoring position, hasn't coming up with that big hit, that signature Mets type of moment. But fortunately for the Mets and for him, really, like the surrounding cast has been very, very good and has given him some time to fit in a little bit. It's probably a little bit not concerning, but I think it is something that Mets fans feel like, hey, he jumped, in Yankee Stadium. He was off to the races immediately, right? Made a huge impact right away. And they'd love to see that. And I think, going back to Bryan's point, I think he's going to get an earful in the Bronx. And, deservedly so. I think one of the things we've seen about Juan Soto in the past is that the big stage and that type of pressure doesn't really bother him and sometimes helps him thrive. So maybe his signature moment awaits this week in the Bronx.
Yeah, maybe those boos that Bryan's saying are going to happen, maybe that'll be the spark that Juan Soto needs. All right, guys, let's get into.
I have no doubt he's right. It's going to be loud.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into our second topic, the starting pitchers for this series. Todd, I'll come to you first. For the Mets, it's Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, and David Peterson. The Mets usually line up their marquee starters for this series. Didn't necessarily do it for this one. What do you think about the starters for this one?
Well, I mean, if you look at this Mets pitching staff, especially the starting pitching staff, it could be considered one of the biggest surprises in all of baseball. They've been absolutely brilliant to this point of the season. Tyler McGill had an amazing April, as good as anybody in the major leagues. And look, Kodai Senga is the one guy that is, so the X factor from the Mets rotation standpoint. And they've got to be very careful with him about the amount of rest he gets, the sort of the workload as he's still kind of coming off an injury-laden season. So with that said, I think McGill, Peterson, and Canning, who's been a huge surprise to the rest of the league, but not maybe as big a surprise within the Mets organization. They liked his stuff. They liked his slider. They liked his makeup. And as we know, Jeremy Hefner's done a great job with the staff in general. So I don't think it's a matter of trying to line anybody up, because you could argue that with Minaya and Montas still being on the shelf, those are the big guys that they brought in as free agent to really solidify the rotation, and they're not in it anyway. So I think the Mets are comfortable with whoever they run out there, and Tyler's had some success against the Yankees in the past.
Yeah, the starting pitching group has been incredible to start the year. Bryan, for the Yankees, Carlos Rodon, Clark Schmidt, and Max Fried are starting for the Subway Series. What are your overall thoughts on the starters facing the Mets' top hitters?
Yeah, I think the Yankees have a slight pitching edge here in this series as far as the starting pitching goes. Carlos Rodon's not the guy who came to the Yankees a few years ago. He's evolved so much from the just fastball slider. Here it is, hit it. He's more nuanced. He really has worked on expanding that and realizing that to compete, especially in the American League East, it couldn't just be a two-trick pony. He really has expanded his repertoire, and he's got more weapons now that he can go after hitters. I think he's got good career numbers against the Mets. I think he's 2-0 with a sub-1 ERA and 2 career starts against them. That I don't read a whole lot into that, except to say he's going to be ready for the assignment. This is a guy who took the ball on opening day because Garrett Cole wasn't available, and really has stepped in pretty nicely as the number 2 behind Fried. I think that Schmidt has been a little up and down. I don't think he's all the way back from the injury that sidelined him in spring training. He got a later start and has dealt with some things here and there. But I think he'll give them a solid competitive outing, probably get you 5 innings and then turn it over to the bullpen. And then Fried, I mean, this guy has been fantastic. He's been everything the Yankees could have imagined. And it's been huge because with Cole going down, if they didn't have him, I don't know where they'd be right now. He has stepped in and really just taken the reins and said, all right, guys, strap on my back. I'm the ace now. And he's leading them toward the top of the division there and really just getting the job done. So he does it in a little different fashion than Garrett does. He's a little less emotional on the mound, but he's every bit as excellent. And he's been a treat to watch. I think I underestimated him, watching him in Atlanta. I knew he was good, but watching him now every start, he's really, really special.
Yeah, huge assignments for the 3 of them this weekend. All right, on to our next topic, number 3, who's in and who's out. Bryan, for the Yankees, DJ LeMahieu in, Cabrera out, hitting the IL. What impact does that have on the Yankees?
Yeah, the Cabrera injury is just devastating. It was tough to watch him getting carted into the ambulance, and it's not just because he's a good player and a solid player and getting an opportunity, but it's what he means to that clubhouse. I think you could see it in Trent Grisham tearing up on the field, talking about it, what they meant. Aaron Judge and teammates going to visit him in the hospital. I think that speaks a lot to not just the Yankee team dynamic, but what Cabrera means in that room. And there's a reason that the New York baseball writers voted him the Good Guy Award, and he came to the Hilton and picked up that award, and I think it meant a lot to him. So you hope the best for him. And as for LeMahieu, you're looking for him to recapture some of what he had previously. I was one of the guys banging the drum after that COVID season. I said they have to re-sign this guy. It's going to age well. He's not an Aaron Judge type hitter, but gap to gap, line to line, he's a grinder. He's going to come up and show up every day, and his body has betrayed him the last few years. And so I think this is an opportunity for LeMahieu to get some playing time, get some run here, and show the Yankees, no, you don't have to go out and trade for somebody else. They can absorb the Cabrera injury because DJ LeMahieu is there. It's his chance to prove it.
Definitely. Just hoping for a fast recovery for Cabrera. Todd, to the Mets. Beatty and Acuna in, Winker and Siri out. What impact does that have on the Mets in the series?
Well, I mean, it's a good point that those are kind of pluses and minuses. I think Beatty has done a phenomenal job of keeping his head, sort of pointed in the right direction. And as a guy that's been given a couple of chances at the big league level and has not performed the way he has hoped or the way this organization is expected, I think he was on a little bit of a run. He got the Zach Wheeler home run before he was sent out, and I think that was a big boost of confidence. And I think what we've seen out of him since coming back is that this is a guy that's attacking the baseball now and really sort of feels confident at the plate. I think he's made some adjustments. I know that he feels like he's ready to handle big league pitching more consistently over the long haul. And, I think the thing that's been a surprise about him is that you can plug him in at third base or second base, and he's not going to give you, it's not going to be a disadvantage at much at all from a defensive standpoint. So I think the Beatty addition has been something interesting. I don't think Siri has been missed tremendously, only in not to take anything away from Siri, but Tyrone Taylor is a guy that is as good defensively as any center fielder. When you watch the guy day in and day out, he continues to impress you. He's always in the right spot. He gets great jumps. He's not afraid to try to make the big play. And, he's going to give you enough offense that Siri is feast or famine offensively. Everybody knows that. He's going to be a guy that when he gets hot can hit 5 balls out in a week, but he can be cold and strike out and not give you much offense. Tyrone at least finds ways to put the ball in play. And this Mets offense, I think, has been clicking more with him in that role of being a guy that can fill in and give you some quality at bats. And I don't think necessarily that you're missing Siri all that much. Yeah. I think Jesse is a loss. And you mentioned Cabrera, not only for what Jesse brings on the field as a left-handed DH, which we might get some of Beatty taking that role, but I think he's a guy that this team feeds off his energy, his sort of positive attitude, that character of his. You've seen him. He wanted so badly to come back to the Mets that he was willing to call the front office and say, hey, bring me back. And it's something that he feeds on. And I think the guys feed on him. So I've seen him in the dugout. He's still participating. He's a long way away from being able to impact them on the field in the lineup, but he still has a way to impact this team, in my opinion, as an overall, bench and clubhouse guy.
Yeah, and that's also super important. Let's go on to our fourth topic and talk a little bit more about the offense for the Mets and the Yankees. We'll start with the Yankees, though. Brian, Aaron Judge, still chasing the Triple Crown for the season, currently leading in all 3 areas there. Paul Goldschmidt, we saw what he did to end the Mariners series. We can talk about Trent Grisham, Ben Rice. What are you hoping or expecting to see from this offense against the Mets?
I mean, I'm just wondering if teams are going to continue to pitch to Aaron Judge. I'm not sure why anybody is at this point. I mean, he's the greatest right-handed hitter I think I've ever seen in my life. He's hitting over 400. He leads the majors, as you mentioned, and homers, RBIs, OPS. He hit a game-winning home run just in Seattle. So, I mean, he's just taking it to another level. And, coming from somebody who literally wrote the book on his 62 home run season, I kind of thought that would be the peak. And, that was where he was going to be, the best we would ever see. And he's just continued to get better. And so, he may not hit 62 home runs, but I think he's a more complete offensive player. And, he's just bringing it on both sides of the ball, and he continues to impress day in and day out. And there's a reason they named him the captain. But you mentioned some of the other guys there, Paul Goldschmidt. A lot of questions, and I think some of them valid about how much did he have left in the tank. He has answered that. The power's starting to come now. The batting average has been high. Ben Rice has been killing the ball since spring training, and you really see the impact of him putting on those 10 pounds of muscle dating back to last June. He's done just a lot of work, and I don't think it's a fluke. I think he's proving now he is a legit major league hitter. And when they have Giancarlo Stanton back, I think that's going to be a real toss-up there for Aaron Boone. Who are you going to play as your DH? So they'll figure that out when they get to it. But Rice has been terrific. And Trent Grisham, let me talk about him for a second. I didn't see this coming. I saw him as a 4th outfielder coming in, a guy who was going to be a good glove and, low batting average and make some good plays for you on defense, but not this. And a lot of it's coming down to swing decisions with him. We have a story up on MLB.com right now about how his chase rate, his contact rate are just off the charts right now. He's making he's swinging at good pitches, and when he gets them, he's crushing them. And so we'll see if he can keep that up. But right now, I think he might be an all-star.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend would be a good weekend for them to keep it up for the Yankees' sake. To the Mets, Todd, this Mets offense, I think one area that they've been struggling in is with runners in scoring position. Francisco Lindor. I mean, you could argue that Pete Alonso is batting the best when it comes to the risks, but how do you feel about those struggles in that area, and how do they kind of mitigate that against the Yankees?
Well, first of all, I want to comment on one thing that Brian said. Mets fans shudder when they hear the name Grisham because the guy just absolutely destroyed them in 22 in the San Diego series. So they're going to have their eye out on that. And then nobody on the planet should be pitching to Aaron Judge. I mean, that's just let somebody else beat you on that side. And there's very formidable offense. On the Mets side, I think the runners in scoring position is something that gets a lot of play. But I love the way David Stearns kind of described it yesterday when he was talking about that. It's not a metric that I think a lot of people, managers in front office and statistical analysts really take as much from as maybe they used to in the past. It's more so swing decisions, chase rate, hard contact when there's men in scoring position. The Mets have shown that those metrics have been good in those situations, and they haven't had some of the results that would increase their average with men in scoring position. But at the same time, Alonso was as hot as we've ever seen him. Lindor off to a better start than he ever has been in a Mets uniform. Soto hasn't really gotten going, and he's been really struggling with men in scoring position. And Vientos is just starting to pick it up as well, a guy that they counted on in that 4-5 spot for RBIs. His OPS has been good over the last 10 days. Beatty back in there. McNeil is another bat that makes contact and has been good with men in scoring position. So I think they're still trending in the right direction. I think the fact is that they've remained at the top of the division. They've won more games than anybody else in the NL aside from the Dodgers. I think shows that their pitching has held them in check, and they've been really great from the 7th to the 9th or the 7th to the 10th inning. And that is where they've made a difference. They've gotten the big hit in the late innings. They've gotten the big hit when they need it, in a close and late situation. And those are the things that I think David Stearns and the rest of the organization is looking at to say, hey, you can't just blanket runners in scoring position anymore. You've got to look at some of the deeper statistics, and they're showing that is going to trend in the right direction. At least it has been right now.
Yeah, really valuable perspective there. To our fifth topic, the Mets and Yankees bullpen. Brian, let's talk about some of the Yankees closer troubles. You can talk about, Devin Williams, Luke Weaver. I don't know if we're going to have a Devin Williams, Pete Alonso round 2 situation from last season. But what concerns you about their pen right now?
Oh, well, I hope we see it, because I would love to see that showdown again. I think Devin Williams would probably like to hit a second chance there, and because he really hasn't been the same guy since that moment. And there was so much made of, here comes the airbender, here comes this guy, 2-time National League reliever of the year. And I feel like maybe it's turned a little bit lately, but certainly early on, the Yankee fans did not see that guy. And it was kind of like, did Pete Alonso break Devin Williams? And so I think he's getting it right. I think, look, the pinstripes are heavy, as Reggie Jackson used to say. And this is something where, clearly he had some hesitations about it, going back to the shaving thing in spring training and the policy that they changed basically for him. So I think that there's a lot of noise going on around Devin. And so I think that the more he gets in there in the 7th or 8th innings, not as a closer, that will continue to benefit him. But you do, every time they call to him, you kind of say, what is this going to be? And even when he does it, it's not always a clean 1, 2, 3. It's not exactly the way it was advertised. And but the skill is still there. I think that there has not been a significant drop off from who he was in Milwaukee. He's just got to kind of block out a lot of that noise. And I think that there was one game recently at Yankee Stadium where he came in and he did the job. And his post-game interview seemed different to me. Before that, it seemed a little timid, kind of like, what's going on here? And that one, I saw it in his eyes. I saw some new focus there. And I think that maybe he's starting to figure that out. So, if I'm Devin Williams, I want Pete Alonso this weekend. I want that showdown again. And let's see, mano a mano. Let's see who wins round 2.
Yeah, let's see. You know what? I'd love to see it, Brian. So hopefully it does happen. To the Mets, though, Todd, they lost a couple of their lefties in the pen. AJ Minter, Danny Young. What impact does that have? What impact has it been having on the Mets? And how do you think that will play a role or a factor against the Yankees in the series?
Well, look, the Mets bullpen, I think, has been outstanding as a whole. I think that David Stearns really focuses on adding depth there, knowing that there's always going to be guys rotated in and out of a bullpen over the course of a year, whether it be by injury or necessity, or you got to rest a guy and you have a spot starter. There's always going to be movement, but I think what they've also done is try to get guys that are not necessarily specialists one way or another. So the lefties, Danny Young was just starting to really throw well. That's a bit of a loss for him and for the Mets, because he was really starting to utilize his strengths against left-handers and have more confidence against the right-handers as well. You've got Brooks Raley on the horizon. That's a little bit later in the season that I think will be a big lift for this Mets team if they can get him back and get him back healthy. He's so steady as a lefty. But the reality is they've got guys like Reed Garrett, like Jose Butto, like Max Kranick, and then Edwin and Stanek in the back that have all had effectiveness against left-handers and right-handers. And so I think they're built to not necessarily need the specialist, but anytime you lose depth in the bullpen, you get thinned out and guys are getting exposed a little bit because they're having to pitch a lot. And that has to do more with the length that the starters are going to before they pass off the ball. So there's been a lot of use out of that bullpen. And I would be more concerned or watchful of that fact than whether there's a lefty or a righty or a matchup available in that bullpen.
Okay, let's get to our sixth and final topic, the predictions for this series. I'm really excited to hear what you guys think. The series is back to 6 games and on the weekends this season. The Mets swept all 4 games last year. Todd, starting with you, what's your prediction for the first Subway Series?
Well, I think the Mets take 2 out of 3. I think Max Fried has always been a beast against the Mets. I think they've got their work cut out for him in one of these 3. But look, going into the Bronx, they're very confident right now. They're playing as well as they have. Last year, the Mets got them at a time where I think the Yankees were a little bit flat. They were able to control Aaron Judge by not having to pitch to him with men on base, and they could work around him and get him to chase to be a little bit more anxious. I think you've got a different animal there with him, on the top of that lineup this year. So the Mets are going to have to do a lot of things right, including getting some clutch hits, because I think this is going to be a relatively low-scoring series if I'm looking at it from, an analyst standpoint. And so I think the Mets have done really well in late and close games. I think they have a little bit of an advantage at the back of the bullpen right now because of the confidence they have against late relievers. And so I'm giving the Mets an edge 2-1 over the weekend.
Okay. Brian, what do you think? What's your prediction?
Well, first, let me say I'm glad it's back to 6 games. That's the way it belongs. This whole interview, I've been looking at that Shea Stadium over Todd's shoulder there. And I remember when the Subway Series was fresh and it was new. I was a fan sitting there for the Matt Franco game. This is the way it should be. It's you build your whole weekend around it. You got New York going, and everything. The fans are into it. This is great. And so now I've got the Yankees taking 2 out of 3 in this one. I think that Todd's right. This is not going to be a high-scoring series. There's going to be no blowouts. I don't think anybody's winning these games 12-3. I think these are going to be tight affairs. I think the Yankees have the pitching edge with Rodon, with Fried, certainly. That Saturday game is a toss-up. I'll give that to the Mets on Griffin Canning. But I think the Yankees have a thunderous offense. We talked about it. They've got the greatest right-handed hitter that I've ever seen, as I mentioned. And so if Judge gets into a few there, he can certainly change a game. The wild card for me is what does Soto do when the focus is on him, when the spotlight is on him, because I've seen it firsthand. he loves that spotlight. He rises to that occasion. He wants everybody to be watching him. And I think that this trip back to the team that he did not choose, that he turned down to go to the Mets, I think he's going to try to have a big moment here, a signature moment. And so if that comes at the Yankees' expense, then that could change the series. But I'm going to go Yankees 2 out of 3.
All right, 2 out of 3 for Todd for the Mets, 2 out of 3 for the Yankees for Bryan. Thank you for watching New York 4 to 7 presented by Verizon. We will be back on SNY's YouTube channel and social platforms from now until the final Subway Series matchup on Sunday, July 6th. For Todd Zeile and Bryan Hoch, I'm Chelsea Sherrod, and we'll see you soon.